Tell you in just a second, he said professionally.
Take your time. Take your time.
That's a voice for radio right there, Professor. Let me be honest with you.
I'm
Not like this
surprised.
one.
I'm surprised I haven't found a way to make that happen so far.
Okay, so we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Yeah, we are. Okay. Whoop. Start repeating over myself. Turn the sound down. Okay. Now, we're going to do our sharing. We're at 5 minutes and counting. This is easily most boring part of the program. We share program out to all of our various Facebook platforms. Folks kind enough to allow us to be part of their Facebook. Let's see how long this lasts before I get blocked, because that will probably happen. That seems to happen. Hey, come on. I turned you down. Stop making noises. Oh. I think I did a very poor job of listing all of your endeavors and accomplishments, Professor.
Oh, it's all
We
good.
dealt, I delved into some of it, but then I don't think I got all of it. I didn't have the bandwidth for all those accomplishments.
It's been a busy time. What can I say?
Yeah, yeah.
Fit
Well,
a lot of
good
projects
thing.
in.
It's a good thing, though. Come on, my poor iPad.
Ah,
It's just so tired and so barely working. Uh, oh, I can do it from there. That's new. That's a change I didn't know about. 5:59. Maybe I should shut up and just get to work here. Let's see how many we get before I get blocked. Just a little piece of inside baseball. For those of you who may be here early, the number of groups that continue to approve our posts, or I should say that are approving our posts, continues to grow. And whether they do that when I immediately post or after, and it could be days sometimes even weeks after. But that number continues to grow. And quite simply, we could not do it without you. Period. End of story. We rely on it. And we're stopped. I missed just a few. Just a few. I missed quite a number. Yep. Boy, I got stopped really early. Okay. It's actually 6:01. Should have started. Boy, I got stopped really early today.
Hey, I can adjust my level on this end. How's that?
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Right on.
I got everything under control here. All right. He said it's 6:02, a little bit late. What do you say we do this thing? 3, 2.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know. To you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight? A loyal man who brings a job a fresh new point of view. But it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president no matter what his creed? It's to which we must be true. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy and the change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Welcome, 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 welcome from my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, Western Hemisphere, North American continent on this planet Earth. The only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 4th of February, 2024. Yeah, the 4th of February, isn't it? How about that? Yeah? Come on, share it with me. What happened to January? I'm not going to miss it necessarily. That said, but wow, we're already into February. And today, very self-serving little note is 11 months from today, something very, very significant is going to happen in the history of the entire human race. We will never quite be the same. I'm completely full of crap. It's a personal thing that's going to be happening 11 months from today, but my goodness, 11 months from today. Because I remember when we were talking about 13 months from today and then 12, and now it's 11. And boy, somebody's really going to start to get nervous when we get into single digits about how much there needs to be done and so on before January 4th of 2025. But that said, kind of cool. 11 months left. You might also notice, if you are watching live, as you should be, or I mean, whenever you do catch us, live or otherwise, or in the recording, I am wearing, for the first time since probably September, maybe. I want to say September, a Manchester United jersey, because 2 big wins by the Red Devils this week. A come from behind win against Wolverhampton Wanderers in the Premier League, went up 2-0, then drew at 2, then let Wolverhampton come back in at 2-2, went up 3-2, let Wolverhampton draw again at level at 3, and then in the 98th minute, an 18-year-old academy project scores the winner with about 120 seconds left to play. And then today, beating West Ham at home at Old Trafford and Manchester 3-0, about as comfortable and relaxed a win that United has had in probably way too long. Way too long. But yeah, good stuff. So I actually broke out a little bit of United today because I haven't had any good reason to wear it. It's been brutal. It's been a brutal year. It's been a brutal year. And it was funny, the commentators were talking about, oh, well, they could still finish third, qualify for a Champions League spot. And I'm thinking, let's just finish the year, shall we? Can we just get this over with? The hell with Champions League and winning things and stuff. Let's just get this over with. Awful. But hey, today, good stuff. So let's take that. Let's get to the business end of the program. It is 6:07, and this is the Kennedy Effect live for February 4th. Wherever you might be on Facebook, thank you for allowing us to be part of your piece of the Facebook universe. To all the groups, large, small, public, private, regional, national, global, we appreciate it very much, and especially the individuals who will put our program on their own little piece of Facebook. Now, I was stopped in record time today from sharing. In fact, I will try to tell you very quickly how many shares I got out before I got stopped. It's a new record this week. I usually get close to 100 before I get blocked. Today, I only made it to 80. So sometime in the second hour of the program, after the very artificial ban is lifted, I will get out to the rest of the groups. But please know, if you're seeing us in your group right now, you can stay right there and watch. Listen in the background as you have dinner, if you're getting the kids ready for school for tomorrow, whatever it is that you might be doing, you can stay right there and watch. It is my personal Facebook, Jeff Kennedy, where you can comment, enter your questions, yell, scream, agree, disagree, anything that you wish can be done right there. If you are in any of the 80 places that we've already shared, stay there and enjoy. We're thrilled that you're there. And if you want to actively take part in the chat, please come on over to my name's right in the little corner there on the screen. Find me and you can question right there. We are also live simultaneously on YouTube. That Other Side of Information on YouTube. I can't say that the YouTube has been the most busy form of communication for us, but it is there, and it gives you, the listening public, yet another way to get to us, to watch, to listen, to enter your comments and your questions, and so on and so on and so on. So if you can't find us on Facebook, if you don't happen to prefer Facebook, whatever you might do, youtube.com/that other side of information. Of course, hot101.net, the global internet radio station. You can listen to hot101.net 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, everywhere around the globe. If you can connect to the internet on planet Earth or above it, you can listen to hot101.net, and you should be doing so. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. There is no type of device that you can't listen to us on: desktops, laptops, tablets, phones, Bluetooth us to speakers, headphones, earbuds, Bluetooth it in the car, which I happen to think is an excellent way to listen. Usually car stereos are quite good quality. Great way to listen. And you can tell Alexa, America's favorite game show, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net, because, of course, even though it's been, I think, maybe a year ago, might even be longer, when I triggered somebody's Alexa, and I giggled about it like a very spoiled little child, and continue to do so. You can tell Alexa to play hot101.net, and of course the TCP Media Group and our sponsor, www.paygive.org, Paygive app, financial transaction and purchasing app. You can tell Paygive to send a percentage of that to the charity or political candidate of your choice, paygive.org. The Paygive app, when you buy things, you have to pay for them. Why not give while you do it? Phone line will be open later in the program. Quick programming note: we will not be with you next week. I know the schedule gets a bit choppy, but we will not be with you next week. It is Super Bowl Sunday next week, and hopefully the NFL doesn't charge me a licensing fee for saying those two words in consecutive order. And just, well over half the country watches. So being here is just not really all that feasible. I know there's a lot of people who don't care about the NFL, and I am one of them. But even I will probably watch passively just to see what's going on. Maybe we'll go to bed early that night. But we will not be with you next week. 4 and 7 is 11. That's the 11th. And then the 18th is when we return to you. Many invitations to be guests on the program are out there to candidates across the country. Hopefully they will join us before petitions are over, or even soon after, when they make the primary ballot. But we will not be with you next week for the 11th. We will be with you on the 18th. Let's get to our guest, who has been waiting patiently and was even kind enough to log in early so that we could test equipment. And if you think I have any kind of voice for radio, you haven't heard that yet. I am going to be severely left in the dust here by our guest, and that is Professor Christopher Smith. Professor Smith teaches at Trinidad College in Colorado, the wide open wilds of Colorado, and is a professor of many different disciplines, many of which are disciplines that we have discussed here on the program, including the social sciences, which would include government and civics and politics and whatnot, the humanities, theater, as our country continues its slow decline to devalue the arts in education, and also works for a historical building preservation society in his area. So we're going to talk about all of that throughout the course of his time with us. Like all guests, I do not exactly know how long Professor Smith is staying, but we'll make the most of the time that we have. Our goal is to take you straight up to 9 o'clock when the Villain's View follows us live on hot101.net and at that other side of information on Facebook. Professor, welcome,
Jeff,
to the program.
Thank you for having me. That's quite an introduction.
I think it's quite ironic that I allowed you to cheat, and I gave away the first question to you when we had a chance to talk earlier in the week. Anybody get the joke? Cheating with the teacher? Yes, I cheated with the teacher, and I cheated on the desk. Who is Professor Christopher Smith, and how did you get here?
Well, you named a few things, and I've got to throw a few plugs right in. TrinidadState.edu is where I teach. That's Trinidad State College, one of the Colorado Community College System institutions, and one of the oldest. It serves just over 1,000 students. here in a community of about 9,000. I live right on the New Mexico border. It's actually a stop on the Santa Fe Trail, which is super cool. And at Trinidad State, I teach in the humanities department, but I also have been heading up a new technical theater program. That's something that was grant funded a few years ago. So there's a lot to be said for how we think about theater, performance, and what we would go pay for, right? Taylor Swift concerts aside, I had to get that name out right away, right? So that's where I stand right now in terms of higher ed. I've got stuff in my past there too. FoxWestTheater.com. Spell theater however you want with a TRE or a TER. But FoxWestTheater.com is a community owned theater. And by community owned, I mean the city purchased the building from private hands in 2018 by way of state grant funding. So the city owns the building, and we have a 501c3 nonprofit, the Fox West Theater Alliance, continuing to raise funds for the building's rehabilitation. So it is an incredible resource. I can talk a lot more about the Fox West Theater too, but I wanted to get those two plugs in. If anybody wants to check them out online, the Fox West is actually on YouTube as well. So you can see both of those things there. And Trinidad State, well, as a college in America in 2024, I have to say we're still accepting applications for the fall and are welcoming students into our both theater and technical theater programs, as well as a lot of others. We do offer a residential higher ed experience. So I wanted to share all that.
You have every right in the world to share it. You should. It makes me want to. I'm not sure that I was originally thinking of this as my opening question, but you've made me think of it, and that's kind of what's cool. I think about what we do here is that the conversation can really go anywhere. There's a lot of flexibility, time, and freedom to go anywhere. And I want to ask you about. There seems to be as the issue of college funding or higher education funding has become so much more prevalent in this country as we talk about student loan forgiveness, the remaining still, by the way, well over $1 trillion in student loan debt that is still out there despite the best efforts of this administration and the party it belongs to. There has been a growing emphasis, I believe, on the quality, the value, both intrinsic value and monetary value of a community college education. There are proposals in multiple states, including New Jersey, to 10 miles to my east, Michigan, New York, California, and many others to make community college free. Right here in Northampton County, we happen to have one of the finest, like nationally recognized county community colleges in the country, Northampton County Community College. Tell me about the value, and however you might want to define value, again, the intrinsic, the educational, the monetary value of community college education, not just what you teach, but the institution itself.
Absolutely. I think that community colleges going forward will become very, very important to our economy. We need places where people can get specialized skills, and our community college systems, each state, are designed to benefit that state. And the state kind of has their back, right? Previous to Colorado, I was in Vermont, and I worked for what was called then the Vermont State Colleges system. Through reorganization, that system is trying to streamline and become more efficient. Here in Colorado, I really appreciate that at Trinidad State College, we predominantly offer associate's degrees, and we try to create pathways that are really, really efficient. One thing that community colleges can do is offer that efficiency in terms of a course map and what you're actually taking. Community college has flexibility. Excuse me. Community college systems have flexibility. The other thing that community colleges really have on their side is location. It is location. And when one is paying tuition for a higher ed experience, an in-person class is very valuable. Online classes are viable, but in-person classes are valuable in ways that I think, especially when we talk about technical programs like technical theater and other career and technical education programs, that's that national standard that any college can embrace and work towards a new CTE or career and technical education program. I'd like to see more of those, and I'd like to see them at the associate's level. I don't think that specialization lifelong is going to be what we need, but in fact, uh, a body of flexible learning that students are equipped with as they go into the workplace today.
My eldest niece will be greatly appreciative of the fact that I mentioned that she is 42. Because she was born when I was 12.
Yeah.
Went to Northampton County Community for, I believe, 2.5 years before transferring to Moravian University. And her degree from Moravian says Moravian University on it. It doesn't say. And yet at the time that she went to Northampton, she lived at home, was able to work a bit,
Right.
and took all of the core curricula classes before getting into the specialty classes at Moravian. And I happen to think that many folks, too many folks, even in 2024, continue to look down on the community college educational experience as somehow you couldn't qualify for a 4-year university, so you had to go to community college. When in fact, I would assume that your institution is the same, that the 4-year colleges and universities near you will very readily accept course credits from Trinidad when you've accomplished everything at Trinidad you can possibly do, and then you move to a 4-year institution. At the same time, though, during those first 2.5, in some cases even 3 years, you've saved how much money versus the quote unquote traditional 4-year institution. Tell me about that value and that perhaps lingering, or if you think I'm wrong about this kind of lingering bit of perception that you couldn't get into a good school, so you went to a community college, which I think is a disappearing point of view, but I do think some people still hold it. Tell me more about that value, that part of the value of the experience itself.
Well, I think we're redefining it post-COVID. And you're seeing a lot of news about higher ed generally, right? And we're learning more stories about institutions nationwide that aren't being run well. And sometimes that really affects, well, the viability of the institution, right? Community colleges are nimble and flexible, and the students benefit. A community college is only going to do something if it's going to directly benefit that community, right? Liberal arts institutions exist for other reasons, but at the community college level, and it's beyond a mere vocationalism, right? We're not just trying to produce people that will work well inside of somebody else's factory, but in fact, try to be that area where people experiment and understand new bodies of knowledge. And at the associate's level, they're graduating with some sense of how they want to go about in the world and what they want to do for a living. That's really important. And as I say, vocationalism, I will say that nursing and teaching, these are known national shortages,
Yep.
and community colleges can respond best to filling that need, right? In terms of the word value, I have to say I fully support states that have come up with a tuition forgiveness upon graduation program, right? You give us 2 years in a community college at graduation, having passed everything, we will forgive your student loan debt. And some states have done that. Some states are experimenting with variations on. But I think it's really important that, as a lot of European countries do, we hear about, you can get all the way up through a PhD paid for by your government in some countries. Here, I think at the very least, it's very reasonable for us to respond to our ongoing crises by saying we will incentivize associate's degrees, right? And that gives a new level of knowledge and lets students understand what they want to be doing. The students I'm seeing today, these are some of the first post-pandemic students, right? They had years of high school taken from them. And like myself at 19, 20 years old, if you asked me what I knew I would be doing or thought I would be doing, I'd give you a big shrug. And so I don't blame anyone that would shrug today. But I understand that, well, again, they lost time literally to the pandemic. How can community colleges respond to that need and to that additional need post-COVID? Again, location, being down the street for an in-person class.
Have you found more of an emphasis on a desire to have an appreciation of in-person learning post-COVID?
The student, yes, absolutely. I think that students really appreciate that option, right? And I think they also appreciate using technology to get in touch with class in different ways, right? Uh, as you know, Zoom is a very valuable tool. And towards public health, I broadcast classes on Zoom that are being held in person for the students' benefit and accessibility. And I love to say, if you have the sniffles, please, please. It might be better if you're on the other side of a browser window today. So
we want you
technology,
to share in class, but not everything.
right, right. We're some of the few that can remember pre-pandemic video conferencing, as we are on today, was not this good. And it wasn't
No.
as reliable as it is today. So how can technology enable further success at the community college level? I think there's a lot to be said there.
How much time, maybe even unplanned time, do you spend in class? I would expect that theater's a very emotional thing. We draw. I've never been an actor. Some people will say I pretend to be a radio host, but I've never been an actor professionally or even for fun. But how have you what difference do you see in students post pandemic compared to pre?
Uh, well, I began in my role at Trinidad State right around the top of the pandemic. So I don't have a lot of frame of reference in theater in the classroom pre-pandemic, but I do have a lot of teaching under my belt from my time in Vermont. Uh, so what's the difference between pre and post-pandemic
Well, even
students?
if it's not necessarily in theater, but
Hmm.
any of this in the classroom situations, what do you see, if anything? Maybe it's a silly question, but I know that there are teachers from elementary all the way through to secondary, friends of ours that are in the teaching area that kids are just a bit different. They're just a bit different after being indoors for nearly 2 years. They're
Sure,
just a little
sure.
different. Sometimes it manifests in just being a little nuts, or they're back happy to be with each other. And by the way, we didn't just come out of this, a month ago. So there's been some time. But being used to going to school 5 days a week, you were going to see all your friends and classmates 5 days a week. Um, Snow days don't seem to be a thing anymore. Now we can all work from home There are no more snow days. Even students can still dial in from home when they have those sniffles, and they can learn virtually while the rest of the class is in person. What are the differences that you see in the students themselves, or just in the whole structure of teaching as an art? Because it is an art and it's a hell of a skill. Pre 2020, 2019, 2020 to post 20, what, 22, I think, when we all finally fully emerged from hibernation, so to speak.
Uh, well, I have to tell that I went on a sabbatical fall 2016 to spring 2017, went back and taught for a year 2017-18 back in Vermont, and then again took a year off and would not, I ended up not returning to Vermont in 2018-19, which is when I started in Trinidad. So my regular 9 to 5 Monday through Friday teaching schedule became a little more fragmented as we headed into the pandemic. Um, so the biggest differences, I don't want to generalize about my students and seen in them, but I can tell you, me personally, how my teaching has changed. One way that comes to mind immediately is, I mean, when did everybody go paperless? I wonder in this industry. And it's still something that I can wrap my brain around, but I also have that frame of reference where I remember printers and deadlines and physically handing in the assignment there in class. And our learning management systems, the ones used at colleges, the ones used in corporations, they've become that good. And it really is cool to be able to set up the deadlines for a semester and make sure the students understand they have every right to work as ahead as they would like. We're going to treat this the way an industry would treat a set of tasks, and we're going to accomplish this knowledge. And again, it's not out of vocationalism, but it's out of, I want them to understand what the world might look like when they're in the workplace, right? So I've been able to use digital learning management systems in really new ways, especially in the last couple of years. And post-pandemic, are students more hesitant to speak in class? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'd like to see some polling on that before I draw my own, estimations about it. I do
Well,
know that, yeah, go ahead.
Much like in Star Trek 2, Spock responding to Captain Kirk, how will your cadets operate, each to their own gifts? I imagine each student has been different in their reactions coming out of hibernation, so to speak. And
Right.
And it is interesting, the revisionist history that we hear. It was, let us remember, by the way, that it was during the Trump administration where these so-called lockdown guidelines were put into place. I just have seen, I remember in our own um, housing complex here where we live, our own townhouse complex, that when you start to see this kids go out to the bus again,
Yeah.
some of them appeared to be really excited. They
Yeah.
couldn't, they just want to get out of the house. Some of them wanted to go back to bed, like we all do on a work day.
Hmm.
And some almost seemed to be um like it was the first day of school.
Right.
Like they were starting all over again, almost a little stiff and nervous, like, okay, is this my bus? Is that my bus? Where am I going? Um, like there was a bit of
Well,
relearning of it. And I was just curious if you had seen anything in your students since that are, and again, I would say probably, the answer is probably each their own gifts. But some that are just bursting, some that are like, you know, I didn't mind being on a computer in my PJs, that kind of thing, or what you've
yeah.
seen so far.
Um,
Because I think you can remote learn to a point,
sure.
but I also think that the in-person exchange and a good old fashioned, when I originally went to college to teach, and the student teaching that I did, that I liked being in front of the students. I enjoyed the interplay, the crosstalk, the discussion. I enjoyed, God help me, I enjoyed the blackboard. How old is that? Yeah, blackboard, because it's this fun thing. You used to be able to draw on it with chalk and then you could erase it. It was really cool. It was like a touchscreen almost, except you wrote on it. It was very fun. I'm just wondering if there's anything that you see from then to now.
Well, I think post-pandemic, my students, my college, all of us, we are still thirsty for in-person experiences, right? And I think some of us are functioning under an amount of risk assessment, right? And it's not just willy-nilly, knowing that COVID is still a thing. I hate to say that, but it definitely is.
Oh, we had it.
Um,
We were in the house all December.
yeah.
Kristen and I
So,
we've got my stepdaughter has it. I mean, it's a thing. There's still at last reporting that I had heard, there's still 1,000 people a week dying from it, and nearly
so
2 million people a week being reported as having tested positive for it per week.
So I'm trying to imagine and have been trying to imagine my 19-year-old self taking that in and knowing that I am putting myself at new risk when I do leave my room, right? And that's tough and it's hard to imagine, but it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. How do we quench our thirst for in-person experiences in a safe way? That's really, really interesting. I don't think that we've come to the end story about it. I do think that in-person experiences, especially with entertainment, are going to become ever more popular. The more digital and even AI created music becomes music, performance, theater, the more we expect from inside of a browser window, the opposite will become true. We will want to have in-person experiences and go see something in the theater. The times that we've held productions at Trinidad State have been so well attended. You can feel the energy in the room. And that's something that I hadn't felt in many years. So facilitating that just looks so different than it used to, right? And I say that as somebody that teaches at a community college, but also somebody that's kept their eye on theaters in this country. There's only a handful of large theater owners that are operating concerts, right?
Mhm.
AEG is one of them, right? Live Nation is another.
Yep.
They do festivals, they do live concerts, and that's great. I support their efforts. It's becoming less viable for smaller venues to do so. Well, it wasn't viable in March of 2020. And as they went dark at the top of the pandemic, it's been difficult to reignite in the same ways because our expectations of entertainment have changed, right? There's
Can I
something, yeah, please.
Let me carry that a step further. I know some of you out there might think I'm trying to beat this topic to death when there isn't that much to be said, but I do think it's something to think about. Someone born in at the cusp of the new millennium, 2000, 2001, would be 23, 24 now, might be a tad old for or older for the classes that you or for the students that you might normally see, but community college is open to anyone. You could be 99 or 100 and still go to community colleges there. I do think it's a legitimate discussion, and I do think it's a legitimate thing to discuss. Thing is such a scientific term. um that if you were born then, you have been alive for nothing other than the September 11th attacks, 20 plus years of war, a near depression in 2007, 2008, and then, uh, well, then three consecutive Republican presidents that lost the popular vote, the Dobbs decision, a global pandemic. a lot of, as we say in the ancient Gaelic, a lot of shite has taken place in your life if you're 22, 23, 24 years old. Do you see any of that in the students that you have either dealt with previously or deal with now? Not to say that they're walking around in a constant state of shock. I don't mean that. I don't think they're all snowflakes. I don't think they're all weak and, looking for crutches and constantly in tears. I don't think any of that's true. But it isn't exactly growing up in the post-war 50s and 60s, is it? I mean, it's as turbulent as the 60s was. It wasn't the largest middle class and the largest industrial nation. And, there was virtually no homelessness, no student debt. What do you
Well,
see out
sure.
of your students? They've really had a go of it. Let's just be honest. They've really had a go of it. If you're 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, you've had a real go.
Yeah. When I
That's a lot
started
of things to happen
teaching,
in your lifetime.
when I started teaching, I was able to ask students, where were you on September 11th? And many of them told me about being in high school. And then as years go by, they tell me about being in junior high and elementary. And finally, we hit the age where, you know, they don't remember it. And that's really striking. And I can measure some of my time in the classroom by how students have it, pieces of history have become that I was there for have become just things that they read about, right? How do they deal with that? I don't know
It's
exactly,
right here.
right?
Right here. Yeah. It's become things that they read about and didn't. Yeah.
Right, right. So, uh, how will we come up with ways to quench their thirst for in-person entertainment experiences is a really cool question. I think that asking it is a good thing to do. Studying the technology that is current in theaters is a really useful activity because honestly, I really think let's imagine COVID gets down to the dullest roar possible, right? And we feel safe paying for in-person experiences. That's going to knock our socks off, and it's going to let us connect with other humans in ways that we ways that have fallen out of favor, right? Fallen out of favor in lieu of a cheap Netflix subscription, right? And that quenches my entertainment thirst. I think that we're going to go back to wanting to see things in person. uh, I have to mention the other big hat I wear is with this Fox West Theater, right? So it's Trinidad. It's turn of the century. It's, 1900. This is a coal town, former stop on the Santa Fe Trail. There's a lot of wealth, a lot of people moving in. And the Opera House, built in the 1890s, well, it's just not holding up. The second floor wood frame is going to collapse, and so they declare there's a fella in town who's going to build the new theater. He hires these architects that are here, based in town. They get help from other people because they've never built anything like it. 1,150 seats across two balconies with a ballroom in the basement. And even today, a Broadway sized stage. This was meant to host all the traveling vaudeville and, well, technology, it was all the rage, right? And I'm actually completing a written history of the building. You can find more at foxwesttheater.com. And also, if you look Fox West Theater on YouTube, you will see virtual walkthroughs and tours of the building. Again, this is owned by the city of Trinidad and operated by a 501c3 nonprofit. Well, you know what happened. By the late 1920s, every theater in the country was interested not in any sort of live performance, but movies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they had been these tiny little things that happened in between the live acts, and then it just took over. So by 1929, this building was converted to a movie theater. When I started working on this project, I couldn't find anybody alive who knew of it as a live stage production place, right? All of that history is already gone, though it seems so recent when you stand on the stage, having removed the movie screen, right? It showed movies until it closed in 2012. Now, Acoustically, it's right up there with Carnegie Hall. It's incredible. What will this community need for what need will it have for it? We have to get it renovated to figure that out, right? And unlike some buildings that got kind of the partial let's get it open renovation, we have spent years in the planning and understanding of what we can do and what we can't do if we want to preserve the character of the building. It's kind of, as far as I can tell, one of the last standing in America. All buildings like this were either taken down or renovated by now, right?
Badly.
So sadly. But again, the acoustics, for every seat across 1,100 of them, the acoustics are so good. There was never a PA system, never a monitor speaker, never a microphone. You're meant to be able to hear everything on stage. Even if I was talking this loud, everybody would be able to hear me because the building is built to accommodate that. The more digital our world gets, I think the more thirsty we will be for actual experiences like that.
Much like the ancient Greek and Roman amphitheaters, where the actors could stand on stage and speak in a normal tone of voice, and folks in the back rows could be able to hear them just by the sheer genius of the way the amphitheater and the marble seats were carved into the side of the hill at just the right angles and pitches. Yeah, I happen to think so too. I do wonder sometimes. My eldest step is 30.
Mhm.
So she was already, 4 or 5 when it seemed like the world got turned on its head. I feel like I had a lot of normalcy when I was a child. Um, so I was born in 69, grew up in the 70s, and we did have the oil embargo, but I didn't drive, so it didn't, necessarily. I mean, it affected me, but it didn't affect me. It's something my parents had to stress about, but it's nothing that I ever felt. Um, so we had the oil embargo. I was Watergate. I was 3, 4 years old when Watergate was taking place. The assassinations of the 60s that already were past us. Vietnam was wrapping up. Of course, it was single digits when that was happening too. I just wonder sometimes if folks, I don't want to say children, they're not children, but adolescents in that 18 plus um, age group is just, if they're just so striving for normalcy, or if their world has been so monumentally abnormal and on fire that is normal.
Well, let's think about entertainment. I mean, I don't think my students really think about the big networks. Nobody's
Oh
like
God,
my
yeah, right.
grandmother's.
Yeah,
What's, in the Philly suburbs, what's on 3, 6, or 10
yeah.
every night, right? And I grew up with the TV Guide. I was in one of the first households where we got cable. We had cable, and it was something that ran to my
So did
house,
we.
and and it was
Did you have Prism? Do you remember
we
Prism?
had
We had
Prism.
Prism
Yes, I
too.
do.
We had Prism too.
And
Prism taught me that in between innings at baseball games, there was still something happening.
hmm,
Remember, because Prism didn't have commercials. So I
right,
thought everybody
right.
just sat down and, like, I don't know, watched commercials in the ballpark. Like, I don't know what they did. And it was
Right.
Prism that taught me that the Philly Fanatic would come out and perform, and that the guys were having infield practice and things like that. Yeah, Prism. Sounds very strange. I'm just saying, when you do nothing but watch baseball on TV, you think it's just okay. Well, commercials. They're all taking a commercial break. I don't know. They're having something to eat. They're on the back of the locker room. I don't know what they're doing. But Prism taught me they were
Well,
actually having infield practice.
and also things like pay-per-view,
Mm-hmm.
right? Pay-per-view and on demand. I remember that was a big thing that now the cable company can offer you programming on demand. Now, I bring that up because what do my students think? Everything's on demand. Everything's on demand. What
Yeah.
I would want to be entertained by, I can receive in the moment I desire it. And that alone is worth pointing out because you and I can remember waiting for a show to
Hmm.
come on at a given hour, right? Or setting a
Appointment
VCR.
television.
Right, right. Appointment television.
Right,
Whereas,
right.
what do my students expect? I do think they appreciate on-demand content in ways that I will never appreciate that truly. Um, well, I say appreciate it, maybe take for granted. They
Y-
may take it for granted because we can remember when it wasn't on demand, right? That's big. That's big. So, uh, I wish I had more insight about my students specifically and how they have changed, I guess, across my full teaching career. As I mentioned, I spent a lot of time in Vermont, and that's a very rural area.
mhm.
And here in Trinidad, while we are a rural community, we are also majority minority serving, which is very cool and not what was going on in Vermont. The diversity here at the community college system in Trinidad is, I really appreciate it. Um, and how does a community college affect the community that it's in? Well, it brings so much. It brings a way that people can experiment with new ideas. We have kind of a maker space on our campus, 3D printers and all kinds of tools that students can use. We don't have specific guidelines or purpose that they need to be using it for. What can that lead to is a really cool question, right?
Well, you would hope it would lead to individual thought and nearly anything. I do think one of the great revolutions in education generally is this idea of, and it's more than idea, it's been put in practice, the more individualized okay education that
Right.
and the acceptance that students learn in very different ways. I am a visual learner. I
Hmm.
can't read. I mean, I can read. I'm literate, but it's very difficult for me to read.
Mm.
It takes a very long time. I jump around the page, and so I'm a visual learner. I will watch documentaries and movies and listen to things. Um, I think that the acceptance that students learn in so many different ways. Um, I think that's probably one of the great revolutions in education. Do you see it? I assume you see students in your classes that, like, that Johnny's a visual learner, Jane loves to read and is quiet in the back, and Thomas
Absolutely.
this way, Juan is this way, that kind
And well, let me mention in my past, I did my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing at Goddard College in Plainfield, Vermont, which is explicitly dedicated to experiential education, to formalize and create a framework for students' self-directed learning that will be explicitly participatory in the world, right? One can only learn so much in a classroom, and one needs to be in the world. And as a practitioner and not merely theory, to be able to fully understand something. I love that. And Goddard College, unfortunately, like so many colleges, is facing its challenges. I hope that there's an excellent book about John Dewey is the founder of experiential education. John Dewey and technology. He's fantastic, and I'm sorry I forget the author's name, but I love experiential education, and I think that we could really rethink the undergraduate or associate's level in terms of how we think about experience. And that doesn't just mean handing out 3 credits for what you were doing before you show up to college,
of.
right? Um, but there's something there, right? There's
Mhm.
something there that can be really, really useful and can help us produce people that really feel empowered by what they've learned in the past and what we can teach them at the community college level.
Yeah, if it's not an oversimplification, and you can tell me if it is, an apprenticeship is experiential
Oh,
education.
sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
I must ask you a question.
Please.
Our mutual favorite hippie in your original home area,
Yes.
Randall asks. In fact, he doesn't ask me to ask you. He pretty much directs me to ask you. I say that intentionally. How your Boy Scout experience and achieving your Eagle Award affected your personal journey in life. Boy Scouts, of course, I guess somewhat sadly, has been pretty deeply mired in controversy throughout its last several decades. But what was your Boy Scout experience like? And does any of that carry through to who you are today?
Yes. My scouting experience was a good one. I was a member of Cub Scouts starting in third grade, Greenridge Elementary, Aston, PA, and then moved on to Troop 292, Aston, PA. There was no troop associated with the Cub Scout pack. So when there was a group of us to move on to Boy Scouts, not Cub Scouts, we started a troop. And yes, Randall Sampson, assistant scoutmaster. We had so many good times. So, how did it affect my experience? That's a book I could write. The amount of travel that we did. I happened to, looking back, I will always know I was so blessed to have had the experience that I did because of a handful of committed adult leaders that were in it for the right reasons and took us camping every weekend, made it happen, said, you should be working on a merit badge. You should be working on this. Here's how to put down a foam pad on the ground so you can sleep. All these basics that uh, you can expect from scouting, but then also an amount of interpersonal experience that I wouldn't have had without scouting. How would I have done that? Right? And how would I have connected with so many people at such a formative age? I think that what scouting did for me could be implemented in the school day, right? In a nonpartisan and non-religious but humanitarian values kind of way. I think that we could come up with a curriculum. It wouldn't take that much work for us to come up with the values that we all agree on, and that, hey, look, for every third grader from here up, right? And what kind of experiences can we provide within the school day that would foster healthy interpersonal relations, right? That's probably project-based learning. Even a group of third graders will take on a collaborative project if given the support and empowerment, right? And scouting for me definitely empowered, like, hey, I have to do this now because I am working on a merit badge. So,
I think that's something that the Peace Corps was meant to be for older for folks who had maybe completed their education or were taking a break from their education. I think that's something
right.
the Peace Corps was meant to do. One of the great lost opportunities for foreign policy engagement, and to redefine, if not completely define, the way that the United States is viewed worldwide was the Peace Corps. While it does actually survive in some form and did survive after President Kennedy's assassination, it was never quite the same, never became the program he wished it to be, never became the billboard, if you will, for the United States that he had hoped it would. We see China, of course, across the African continent now, just taking pretty much anything that they want from the local populations: gold, lithium, silver, oil, gas, timber, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, diamonds, geez, diamonds, et cetera, without firing a shot, as they provide solar powered electricity, well waters, schools, roads, to these villages. These were all things the Peace Corps was meant to do. I know that you have to leave. I do want to ask one last kind of serious
Well,
question. I wish it
let
was something more
you
uplifting.
No, it's all good. Let me just mention, you mentioned Peace Corps, and I have to mention when I was teaching freshman comp, which was my bread and butter for a very long time, We've got to have students read and write about something, right? And it needs to be general. And I was at a technical college, but it also needs to be engaging. It needs to hit them at their age and position in life. I developed an entire curriculum for freshman comp about the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Yep.
That is the
Yeah.
1930s movement
The
where
New
we are
Deal,
going
one of the
to,
New Deal alphabet soup administrations. Absolutely.
right.
Yes.
And for a 17, 18-year-old to read firsthand diaries of a 17 or 18-year-old that went to live in a bunkhouse, got paid X, not, got 3 meals a day, and things were that difficult that the government needed to systematically have us start building stuff. I don't know if we're there, but I think it would be worth trying. I don't know if our economy is bad enough to warrant a new civilian conservation corps, but it might be worth trying anyway, right? We
Well, I
could
would say
stand
that
for
the
that level.
infrastructure bill and uh, the Build Back Better plan with the 487 billion toward toward greening the economy are very similar. The Tennessee Valley Authority, by the way, still exists and
Right.
operates. The Civilian Conservation Corps, of course, and I don't think it was a CCC. I think it was another alphabet, but built post offices, schools. If you've ever visited Newport, Rhode Island, you go out to Breton Point Park, where the Portuguese landed hundreds of years ago. There was a seawall there to keep the land and the homes from washing away. And there are lovely brass plaques buried in that wall, several of which have been stolen, sadly, that says that
Mm.
this was a CCC project. Franklin Delano Roosevelt president, built in 1937, I want to say. Might have that
Mm.
wrong. But yeah, I think there's elements of that in some of the recent um, uh, legislation coming out of the administration, but I think the general um, uh, um, happiness that kind of comes from the happiness isn't the right word. I'm missing the word, but the general sort of warm feeling that you get from hearing about the CCC seemed to be, even though Republicans hated the New Deal and still do, the New Deal was exceptionally popular, and it was very, very well thought of. And even if you were not a fan of President Roosevelt, you probably took advantage of one of the New Deal programs. And the CCC was very well liked and very well appreciated by people all over this country who got new roads or dams or rail lines or post offices or schools or any one of a hundred different things. I do want to ask you before you go. I want to make sure that I get to it, and it's not
Okay.
terribly the most happy topic. I'm wondering about the stress that you might see. And if you don't see any, then tell me that too. But the stress that you might see within your student population over debt and over the costs of higher education. We know that community college is not as expensive as some four-year schools, state and private ones, especially. State schools, generally speaking, being a little less expensive than the private institutions, but still, higher education in this country is a for-profit business. It just is. That's why community colleges, I think, provide such a deeply necessary service, because they're not really for-profit institutions. Um, but Harvard makes money. They make a lot of money. Lehigh University, I can throw a rock to right over my shoulder here. They make a lot of money. These have become for-profit institutions. What stress, if any, what discussions, if any, what classroom discussions, either between students or if you all do the good old fashioned put the chairs in a circle, do you talk about student debt and the cost and the burden of the cost of higher education in this country?
Uh, Among my students, this is why I'm at a community college. And before this, I was at a community college. After I earned my PhD, I mean, I could have started to apply to a lot of different institutions, right? Probably be more well compensated than I am today. That's almost fair to say. But I will say that amongst my students, I don't hear them worry about their student debt. We offer so many scholarships, and they have so many pathways to grants and Pell, and so many different avenues exist for them that I think those students that are interested in the opportunity find a way to make it happen, right? And props go from me go out to all states, Colorado included, that have in whole or in part incentivized students' success, right? And that's what it's about. If the state, any one of the 50, is going to run a community college system, number one, you cannot run it like a for-profit college. It's not a for-profit college. You have to be solvent. That's a very fair thing for anybody to be. But you also have to take into account that you are trying to serve, historically underserved populations.
Mhm.
And some states have been very, very explicit in providing opportunities for students through their community college systems.
And
Here in
let's remember,
Colorado,
when Thomas Jefferson founded the University of Virginia, he did not do it for profit.
right.
Eh,
Here in Colorado, I'm super proud my school offers so many degree programs. I mentioned nursing and teaching,
mm,
right? TrinidadState.edu for more information about the scholarships and opportunities that we have established because we need to cater to the needs of our community. Some states are waking up to how community colleges can participate and boost the state economy. Other states are not. And others are interested in aspects of colleges like, there's a lot that can be distracting when you're putting together any institution. So, yeah, I think in a year or two from now, we will only be talking more about state community college systems and their viability, their value, and their quality.
I know that you have to go. I want to give you the same uh, standard sort of opportunity that we give all new guests. And it's a couple things. I need to tell you some bad news.
Okay.
That is, you are part of our family now. And that
That's
it is
not bad news.
my deep, deep hope that this is not the only time that you will come and visit us, and that you have an open door here. If there is anything that you wish to share with my audience, and it doesn't have to be for an hour or more, it could be a quick 5 second or 5 second, 5 minute, 10 minute thing. You are always welcome here. Always, always,
Oh,
always. There's so much we didn't get to talk about. I feel like I kind of beat you over the head with this one kind of topic, but I really did want to explore it with someone who's in the classroom every day.
absolutely.
You are
And
always welcome to come back here. And I want to just throw the floor open to you.
mm,
Anything else that we maybe didn't get to mention, or an answer that you didn't get to fully suss out, or just I just want to give you the floor and hopefully restrain myself and shut up for a minute. And also, I've been asked on Facebook if you can hang in for a couple minutes while a certain somebody calls into the program.
I can hang for a couple minutes, but
I
in
don't have
terms of
to tell you who that
I could have guessed.
is.
So in general, things that we haven't covered yet, I really appreciate our talk about higher ed. I think it deserves our attention. It deserves our positive attention. It deserves our thinking in big ways. I don't think that we're going to be able to maintain the status quo inside of some institutions, and that includes colleges and universities, right? Status quo doesn't mean sustainability.
Right.
Um, so with that being said, um, hey, and I got to mention it, I mentioned it briefly, but AI. AI is a thing. And I would encourage everybody listening to have experiences that are not digital. And that might mean you enjoy your vinyl records, but that might mean you pick up the guitar.
Mhm.
You realize during the pandemic, ukulele sales skyrocketed. Sales of musical instruments in general skyrocketed, but so many people during the pandemic said, I'm going to take this opportunity because it can't all exist inside of a browser window or on my
Right.
device, right? So whatever ex whatever experiences you can provide yourself that isn't consuming digital media and you lose track of time during, please do them. Order some colored pencils, order a guitar on, some online site and just have some fun with that
Well,
because
we've seen
uh
the massive growth of coloring books for adults. Just
right,
the
right,
relaxation that literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of adults will get from coloring in a coloring book.
right.
It seems so. I. It's not a. It's a worse word than I mean, but it seems so juvenile. But yet we see adults do, and I think one of the great measures of a society is its culture, its culture it can be defined by its art. It's generation of an appreciation of art, whether it is theater, music, dance, movies. I would hope radio. Um, these are one of the ways I think a society is measured by its cultures or its appreciation of culture.
I'm very, very interested. I've been consuming, geez, for like 2 years now. I don't think I've watched a regular TV show in so long, and I'm watching so many YouTubers. And not specifically things I can do, like take an Apple IIc and disassemble it and blow it out with the air compressor and identify all the chips and put it back together. And I would never be able to do that. Why am I interested in this person's content? Because I can almost feel that they're that emphatic and empowered by having that to do, right? And it only takes the camera on their phone at that time
Mhm.
to reach me without intermediary. You don't even need a sponsor to create that kind of content. I wish it wasn't on a corporate site like YouTube, but I'll take this. I'll take this over a lot of other uses of the internet that we've already seen, right?
I get it from my side too that you know one of the I am a victim of and a product of this age. Uh,
Hmm.
you podcast yourself, so there are over 10 million podcasts that are active and current. I think our show's a little different because we're live. It does stay on recorded, but we're live. Anything can happen, and that anyone can buy one of these and a
Mhm.
set of these. And if your computer has enough bandwidth to do Zoom, you're out there. Um, and it's kind of I'm a product of it. I would have had to have auditioned and tapes and reels and tried to find a terrestrial radio station that would allow me to come in on their turf and do a show like this in previous eras. And I'm a victim of it too because there's a lot of crap out there. And to
Hmm.
sift through all of the crap to find a humble program like ours is you're a victim of it and a product of it all at the same time. It's very ironic. I think you might know the person who's called in. I'm not sure if you do. Let me introduce you to Randall Sampson. Randall, go ahead, sir.
Hi, Jeff. I'm I'm glad to connect with my friend Chris Smith and the show. I wish you could stay longer, Chris, because it's been a very extremely interesting show, my brother. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to wish you, Chris, for having a great discussion interview with Jeff, and
Thank you.
definitely come back to the Kennedy effect some other time.
Well, thank you, Randall. I appreciate it. Assistant Scoutmaster Randall Sampson, everybody.
I wasn't just the assistant scoutmaster. I was the elder. I was the elder at Aston Presbyterian Church that said I would be the institutional representative to our then pastor, and he's the one that pigeonholed me
into being the assistant scoutmaster because he knew that I was in the original 292, which we resurrected for you to have a place to go from Cub Scouts from Webelos at age 12 into Boy Scouts. And I stayed only as long as I could with other commitments, like when I was elected commissioner in Aston. And I only stayed until you were the first and the resurrected 292 to achieve Eagle Scouthood. And to this day, I am so proud that
Thank
you
you,
were the
Randall.
one that asked me to deliver that to you at your
Thank you.
ceremony.
Well, Randall, let me
Like,
ask you a question. I got a question for you. So, and I said this earlier, I wish that K through 12 public education in America could do for students what scouting did for me. I wonder if you think that's possible, and if so, what piece of scouting could you stick into public schools that would do it?
well, I think there'd be a lot of things from scouting you could punch in, especially at the elementary level.
Like
I
pocket
think you could
knives?
punch. I
No.
think you could punch in and start at the elementary and go through high school. I think you could punch in um, basic economics, not hey, you can do math. You can do a spreadsheet on your budget. If you can do math, uh, you can if you can do math, and if you have the gumption to save for something to buy something big versus spending it all every week, like allowance or whatever you might earn. It's like when I was in high school at Sun Valley. Uh, they taught you how to write a check out. They taught you basic economic things to survive as an adult. And I think that could be done. I also think that that camaraderie of camping, for example, uh, can lead to closer interpersonal ties with your peer group, as you well know what I'm talking about.
That
Yeah.
teamwork, right? Is that what you mean? The teamwork of all combining toward a common goal.
That's part of it, Jeff, but it's also just the camaraderie of that type friendship.
Mm-hmm.
That you know, Chris mentioned earlier. He said it was every weekend, but it wasn't. It was once
I said every month, once a month,
Friday,
once a month.
Sunday night when we brought all the boys home, and that that experience, that experience of learning to cook around the campfire, that experience of to learn how to build a campfire, all the survival skills. I mean, at that time I was assistant scoutmaster. I was still certified by the American Red Cross in first aid. As an instructor, I was still certified at that time by the Red Cross for CPR instructor, and I was also at that time certified by the American Heart Association for CPR instructor. So I worked with the Boy Scouts on those first aid life skills. Remember, Chris?
I do. I do. Yeah, I think there are certain parts of scouting and that we could really import into our curriculum, like first aid, right? But what about a Pinewood Derby? What about you each make a car and we race them down a wooden track?
Engineering.
That's an analog experience that, when you ask a third grader to do that, it really it empowers them in ways that you can't describe. You can't describe.
No, my fourth grader, my oldest grandson is fourth grader this year in Cub Scout. Yeah, he did Pinewood Derby again. Did he win? No. Did he care? No. It was the joy of building his Pinewood Derby car with his father. It was the joy of taking part in an exercise of friendship.
Right. And something you wouldn't do without the framework of I'm part of this group, right? And this is what we do every February, right? Pinewood Derby.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
think I don't think there's
Yeah.
millions of kids building Pinewood Derby cars in their garage with nothing to do with them. That the event is, you know, perhaps a chicken and the egg kind of argument, but it's the event that spurs the building. But the what you learn in the building is stays with you, I would hope. Yeah,
right, right. And the experience of building it.
right.
It's part, Jeff, it's part of STEM. And there's so many things that scouting programs, you know, do for STEM. We had, Chris, you remember when we had to build out of toothpicks and Elmer's glue? We had to design a bridge to take the most amount of weight on it before it
All right,
collapsed.
you're close, Randall. It was, and this is really, really cool as well. A spaghetti bridge competition. And we were lucky to have a scoutmaster who actually was an engineer. So we got very in the weeds and scientific about it. But all you are allowed to do, all you are equipped with is one box of spaghetti and one tube of Duco cement, which sticks to spaghetti for some reason. Can you build a bridge that is going to support a certain amount of weight, and how much weight before that bridge breaks? You'd think it wouldn't be much given a box of spaghetti, but it was incredible, right? Pouring water into a bucket to see how many pounds it can hold. Uh, I'll never forget one fella just took the wad of spaghetti and covered it in cement like a big log, and it broke right away. Whereas if you actually engineered a bridge, you really had something. That was a complicated project, Randall. Thanks for mentioning it. Now, I mean, should 12th graders spend time on a spaghetti bridge competition? I don't know exactly how they're spending time now, but that sure seems like a capstone project that puts into practice their understanding of math and science and engineering, right?
You remember when we constructed a tower out of branches and lashing and with our scout knots and climbed up 30 feet at least?
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's STEM. Jeff, that is STEM. That
Ex-
is engineering
what
skills to scout.
what Professor Smith mentioned before, experiential learning via hands-on experience.
Absolutely. And I just like Chris was lucky to go to a college that had exponential learning. I was fortunate to graduate from Warren Wilson College, which has the same experience. Different than his, mine was in technical skills. We had a work program. I worked on heating and plumbing for years. I did plumbing. Uh, I served on. I got 2 hours work credit a week. We had a volunteer fire service. That's what led me into what I did the majority of my life, which is being a fire marshal, which was being a life safety officer, which was being a fire safety instructor. That's what led me into it. Not my college degree, but the work experience, the existential experience of the college I went to.
Well, thank you again, Randall. And I would not have thought to bring scouting into this conversation, but it was such a rich experience that I had. And it's really interesting to think about education in terms of, well, we can say the word experiential over and over, but we've been able to name a few moments in scouting that were decidedly so. How can we make those happen for the students that are not yet choosing a college, right? Awesome.
All right, let's let the professor get on his way, Randall.
All right, Chris, I'll talk to you soon, bro.
Sounds good, Randall. And Jeff, thank you so much again for the invite. I'd be happy to come back. We can take on all kinds of topics, right?
Everything that we missed. We didn't even touch on humanities or uh, the rest the historical building preservation project that you work on. I know you talked about the theater, but that you know, but the rest of the project that you oversee and all that. There's so much to talk about, and the importance of that, by the way, the importance of saving a municipality's original downtown and as many original buildings as you can, and all of that. There's so much more that we could get to, but I already kept
Well,
you.
you know what? Let me just offer one more plug and my next appearance here. I at the end of this month, I'm attending and presenting at, this is a mouthful, the Southwest Popular American Culture Association. There's two big pop culture academic crowds in the United States, and this is one of them. Their national conference is later on this semester in Chicago. I'm attending their regional conference in Albuquerque. And what's really, really neat is I've been for every year for the last couple. Last February, so many, anybody that taught, we wanted to talk about AI. And I experienced so many great presentations. So let me come back and next time I'll give you my highlights from a pop culture conference and we can chew on those.
It's nice to take a break from deep politics every now and then, and I would appreciate talking about that. And I happen to be very passionate about with a city as old as Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The first Moravian settlers came here in the late 1600s. Uh, what remains of the Bethlehem Steel property, and legislators trying to save that as well. That type of preservation means a lot to me personally. I think, we're smart people. We can walk and chew gum. I think we can build new buildings where they are needed and where the space might provide, and in place of buildings that are uninhabitable or uninhabited or unsafe or anything like that. But we can still save our history all at the same time. I think it's an extremely important thing to a municipality and to an area. And I think it's something that some places can only realize how important it was now that it's gone. As magical, my favorite city in the country, and as magical as New York City can be, nearly all of its history is gone. And there's a few old original Dutch buildings down at the South Street Seaport, and there's the occasional home here and there, but so much of it is just gone. And it's still, Manhattan is still a ridiculously awesome place, but it's a lot of that history is gone. It's what makes Philadelphia, I think, a very unique city, that so much of its history remains and can be visited and is preserved. And I think, for a city like Bethlehem, or any one of, the tens of thousands of municipalities across this country, that saving that local history is terribly, terribly important to their identity. At the same time, welcoming new construction and new residents and new folks and visitors and so on, and restaurants and bars and green spaces. But you can keep your history, because it's terribly important. But we can get to that next time. You already stayed a half hour longer than you wanted. I feel like I trapped you. I hope you don't feel that way. But thank you
it's all good, Jeff.
Thank you very, very much for sharing some of your time with us. And again, it's extremely important to me that you know that the door is open to you here. You can come back anytime. You're part of the Kennedy Effect family. There's so much more we could talk about, and we just look forward to seeing you again. And until that time comes, please be well. Contact us anytime, and come back and see us.
Thank you. Thank you again, Jeff. Thanks to all your listeners, and I will catch you again soon.
Thanks, Professor Smith. Have a great day. Great rest of your
too.
day. 2 hours behind us in the mountain. He's still got a lot of night left. We
Bless you.
have about 90 minutes left of our program here. It is 7:30 Eastern time here on the Kennedy Effect, wherever you might be on Facebook. And I was able to finish the sharing that I couldn't do earlier. So we're out at 109 shares now. I was able to finish it. I guess my Facebook jail did not last too long. So we made it out of that. So we're at 109 places across Facebook. And again, I say this so many times during a program. I know that, Facebook is this massive, giant, enormous corporation. 2/3 of the planet, or no, about half the planet is a member of it. They collect data on every single keystroke, which they use for marketing and advertising, and they're a $1 trillion company. These are, I get all that, but when you create a Facebook profile or Facebook page, I, in my old-fashioned ways, perhaps still consider that to be yours. Granted, Facebook owns all of it. I get it. I'm just saying, when you create a page, when you create a profile, that's a piece of you. So for everyone that allows us to share into your corner, that bit of Facebook that you created, it means everything to us. I'm humbled by it. I appreciate it very, very much. I do not take it for granted. And we just very much appreciate it. So we've shared the program to 109 places, at least that I did. I'm sure some other folks have shared it along the way as well. I think our last program we shared, I think the shares ended up somewhere in the 120s. So we appreciate it. If it's your individual Facebook timeline, I think we call them timelines now. If you are an administrator of a Facebook group, be it large, small, public, private, national, regional, global, galactic, we thank you. We thank you and we thank you. Because even though we do have a sponsor, we're not making a lot of money here. We're not making any money here. So the sponsors really only just kind of covered costs that I've put into the program so far, and that George has put in, for that matter. So it means everything to us that we live on that sharing, and it's how we reach more people, and we do continue to reach more people. We're very blessed that way. We must be doing something right. I've joked a lot of times in the program about April Riddick, without whom I would not have this program. Kind of giving me some stick occasionally about, like, boy, you're boring, but you're good boring. Because I'm not yelling, screaming, cussing up a storm, wearing stupid clothing, or swearing, or calling people names, or embarrassing them, or trying to get them with gotcha questions or things like that. She says, you are kind of boring, and you'd probably be more popular if you did crazy stuff, but you're not a crazy person, so you give them what you got. And yet we continue to grow. We now reach where our reach of the program, it doesn't mean that this many people are listening right this second, but we are now reaching 500,000 people around the globe. And I think my first program, I reached about 1,200, and now we're at about 500,000. So we're doing something right, and we're doing it in large part because you good folks that might retweet the program, that see it on Instagram and share it, that share the videos out, the promotional videos on TikTok, that share the program, the whole of the program on Facebook. We just gained a new YouTube subscriber tonight, while the show was happening. A nice lady named Michelle found us and watched for a few minutes and ended up subscribing. That's what we live on, and we need you to continue to do that. Shares, likes, subscribe, follow. I don't know, all these terms. You know all the terms. So to everyone on Facebook, thank you, thank you, thank you. You can continue to watch where you are. And if you missed any of the program and you allowed the program to be in your Facebook space, it will stay there. You can always scroll back and watch the entire thing. I think the best place to catch up on the program, if you missed any of it, is our YouTube channel, That Other Side of Information. We are live there now. That's where I saw Michelle. No one else happens to be there at the moment, but we are live there. And you can always check out YouTube. You can always check out YouTube. And that is kind of our library, if you will. As soon as we're done and I turn off, the program stays there on YouTube. You can watch it anytime. You can watch it in smaller pieces, 10, 20 minutes at a time, however you decide to take it in. And those numbers continue to grow as well. The number of people who used to watch our program after we finished live was almost nil. And now there's a really good number of folks who will take it in throughout the week. So for everybody on Facebook that allows us to be there, thank you. We couldn't do it without you. Hot101.net. Our name is our web address, hot101.net. But you don't need the main website to listen. We have the Apple App Store app for Apple devices, Google Play Store for Android devices, and you can use the TuneIn radio app as well on any type of device. LGs and all, or there are actually other Motorola's. There are actually still other people other than Apple and Google, or Apple and Samsung, that make phones. The Google Pixel, all these things. The TuneIn radio app works on every phone that I'm aware of. There's not a single phone that it doesn't work on, to my knowledge. So you can use the TuneIn radio app. You go up the search bar, type in hot101.net, and you are listening. One of the great things, among many great things, about the hot101.net apps, plural, are you tap them, it opens, you listen. No login, no blood sample, no retina scan, no credit card imprint, no Venmo account, none of that. You tap it, it opens, you're listening. Done. Period. So I strongly encourage you to be part of our hot101.net family. We're also part of the TCP Media Group from Lancaster, PA as well. Our goal is to try to take you up at least to the pre-show of The Villain's View. It's a shame that the professor couldn't stay longer. I think I've gotten spoiled with the guests who are usually willing to stay here for the full 3 hours. I didn't know he was leaving so early, but guess what? That's okay, because anyone who is a guest on our program is donating their time. So if he was here for 5 minutes or 3 hours, we are lucky, and we appreciate it. And it's always great to see a new face and hear a new voice here on the program, and especially somebody from outside of the Lehigh Valley or the Pennsylvania area. The professor came to us from Colorado. We do have a national and international reach on this show, and it's thrilled. I'm always thrilled when we can get somebody from outside the area. With all of that said, let us now then do what we tend to do when the guest is not with us any longer, and that is, let's go through our Facebook page and some of the important articles that we have shared with you this past week, or really this past 2 weeks, because we were not with you last week. So we missed some things. And again, I should tell you again, the phone line is open, by the way. It's open. Randall taught you how to use it. It's super easy. All you do is dial it and you're on the air. We don't screen. I don't have call screener. I don't have call screening software. I don't have any of that stuff. If you dial us, you're getting on. How long you stay will depend on, how you conduct yourself. But you can call, disagree with me, yell at me, scream at me, tell me I'm wrong about any one of a myriad of different things. But let's talk to each other. Phone line is open. Why am I forgetting my own phone number? I almost gave my cell phone number out, which would not have been a good thing. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. We'll take your comments and questions on Facebook and YouTube as well. We will not be with you again next week. I know our schedule gets a little choppy sometimes, but Sunday evenings is a rough time. There's a lot going on Sunday evenings, and next Sunday, of course, is the Super Bowl. It's about 60% of the country watches it. So that will certainly kind of decimate our audience. It's an odd time. You know, by the time the Villain's View comes to you next week, Super Bowl will basically be over. Not for us. We'd be right in the middle of it. So we will not be with you next week. We will return on February 18th. No guests lined up so far for the 18th, but we always manage, don't we? So it's 7:40 right now. I want to talk to you about some articles that we had on our Facebook page in the last couple of weeks, some highlights. From the BBC, I posted this 2 days ago. Big U.S. jobs rise in January, surprises again. As many times as the so-called pundits and conservative economists, especially even Larry Kudlow this week, who was an economic advisor to Trump and is a devout conservative, quote unquote, economist. I think he's more of a television personality myself, but whatever. From CNBC, now he's at Fox Business. He was at CNBC, which in and of itself, by the way, as supposedly liberal as MSNBC is, CNBC has always been rock solid corporatist and conservative. And Mr. Kudlow used to work there as well. Even he said, if I was President Biden, I would be out bragging about how good this economy is. And that it now appears that there will be no recession. Everyone was predicting a massive recession following the inflation numbers, that people would stop spending, and that all of the interest rate cuts that were being imposed upon us by the Fed and Jerome Powell would cause a recession. Normally, the way the Fed fights inflation is to cause a recession, to slow down spending, and then prices come back down, inflation comes back down. Well, inflation has come down. Last measurement I think I saw for was about 3.4%, which is still higher than the 2% that the Fed likes to see. No, you know what? I take that back. Inflation, I think in January was actually in the negative. But because it has risen so much, the net inflation was still, I think, in the 3% range, if I'm not mistaken. The inflation or the unemployment rate is 3.4, 3.7, 3.4, which in an economy of this size is virtually full unemployment, that the number of unemployed people is actually so small that it's, in an economy of this size, it's such a small percentage. And the labor participation rate continues to grow as well. The difference between the unemployment rate and the labor participation rate is that, you know, self-employed people might be considered to be employed. That the percentage of people who can work, who are working, who are on the books and registered and measurable, that continues to grow. At one point, the labor participation rate was lower than it was during the Republican Great Depression, and that number continues to grow. So even Larry Kudlow, even some Republicans, even some very conservative economists are saying this economy is quite remarkable, and that right now we're actually the strongest economy probably of any of the OECD nations. Union membership is on the rise. Randall very correctly points out that the wages have risen, outpacing inflation, which means that people are actually taking home more money and they're not having to spend all of it. But this article comes from the BBC. I posted this 2 days ago. That would have been Friday. Employers added 353,000 jobs and average hourly pay jumped while the unemployment rate held steady at 3.7%. The Labor Department said the report extended a streak of job gains that has surprised economists. who have expected a jump in interest rates since 2022 to slow down the economy. Analysts said the job market strength made an early rate cut less likely. Now, I will continue to scroll back. The Fed did meet this week and decided not to change interest rates. Now, I happen to believe that Jerome Powell, who is a Republican, and who is the first banker to be head of the Fed, the first man who's not an economist. He's a banker. He was Trump's pick to be Fed chair. I was gobsmacked that Biden kept him. Said that he is not going to lower rates quite yet. I believe he doesn't want to lower rates. I believe he wants to do what he can to hurt this president. But even he himself said, let's tell, right in that press conference, I'm paraphrasing, not a direct quote, let's tell the truth, folks, this is a really good economy. Now, he could have continued to help this economy by cutting interest rates, but I've seen several reports that even the real estate industry is seeing home sales begin to rebound, even though interest rates are as high as they are, and 30-year various mortgage rates are actually beginning to decline, even though the Fed has not changed rates. I don't think the Fed has an excuse not to lower rates, but at least they did not raise them again. They did not lower them, but they didn't raise them. They have absolutely no justification to raise them, but thank God they didn't do it anyway. I think they should have lowered them. I kind of believe that Mr. Powell doesn't want to lower them. I don't think he wants a super, super great, red hot economy for this president going into an election year. But I don't think he can kill the economy either, because he tried and it didn't work. 2 days ago, this is a story from Canadian Broadcasting, the CBC.ca. I think the CBC app, the BBC app are wonderful news apps. If you don't trust domestic media, from my Republican conservative and trending conservative, changing from liberal to conservative friends out there, if you don't trust domestic media, NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, Reuters, you name it. If you don't trust them, the Washington Post, New York Times, if you don't trust domestic media, then seek foreign media. And I think more times than not, you will be surprised that what the foreign media is reporting is pretty damn spot on to what the American domestic media is reporting. And notice I didn't mention Fox when I was talking about media, because they aren't media. They admitted in open court that they are not media, their opinion. Remember that. To save themselves from, well, they ended up paying almost $1 billion to Dominion anyway, but you get my point. This is from the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting. This is from February 1st. I posted it, I think, on Friday, but the original article is from February 1st. Okay. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's fundraising slowed in the last 3 months of 2023, and his legal fees appeared to drag on to. Let me try that again. And his legal fees appeared to drag on the finances behind his election effort, according to fresh disclosures submitted to the Federal Election Commission. Why do you think Republicans want to kill the Federal Election Commission? They don't want this stuff coming out. Trump's election campaign reported raising $19 million during the last 3 months of 2023, down from $25 million in the third quarter. The total lagged the $33 million reported by President Biden. Trump's campaign ended last year with about $33 million in the bank, compared with nearly $46 million for the Biden campaign. The largest super PAC supporting the former president, a group called MAGA Incorporated, sent $30 million during the second half of 2023 to a separate Trump group known as Save America, which has been paying his legal bills. So if you're one of the sheep, if you're one of the cultists, if you're one of the followers, donating money that you probably don't have, because it is pretty well that the small dollar donations to Trump are from poorer and poorer Americans, poor white Americans especially. You're paying his legal bills for him, not actually contributing to the campaign, buying yard signs or advertising, or you're paying his legal bills. A real billionaire would not need to suck up to you and beg you for money to pay his legal bills. A law-abiding citizen wouldn't have legal bills. Corporations still do. But a law-abiding citizen wouldn't need so many lawyers and have so much legal debt if they were just, I don't know, obeying the law. But when you send that $5 a month donation, or that one time maybe $10, $20, $30, $50 donation, and you think you're helping Trump buy yard signs or buy advertising or help his travel on for campaign stops or what, you're paying his legal bills. We're smarter than that, folks. We're smarter than that. We really are. It's a sad, it's sad. I don't look, I never supported Mr. Trump because I don't believe, because I'm a Democrat. He was running as a Republican. I didn't believe in what he was standing for. And when he stood in front of the country and gave you and said he supported Bernie Sanders' platform of cutting taxes on poor people, raising taxes on corporations and rich people, strengthening Social Security, strengthening unions, all these things that Bernie talked about, when Trump stood there and said them, I never believed for a second that he believed any of it. And then his governance or lack thereof showed you that he didn't believe in any of it, because the only real significant legislation he got done in his entire 4 years was a $8.4 trillion tax cut, a tax cut that Paul Ryan got $1 million going away present check from the Koch brothers for when he resigned from Congress. So I've never supported it, and I never will. But I think you folks are smarter, even if you believe in the so-called policy positions that he believes in, which are none, really. He has no real platform. But even if you believe in those, why does a billionaire need to beg you for money to pay for his legal bills? We're better than that, folks. We're smarter than that. At least I would hope that we were. An interesting historical article that I posted from Tom Hartman. I tend to post from Tom Hartman nearly every day. The op-eds / commentaries that he writes are usually very appropriate, and I tend to post them nearly every day. Not always. Sometimes I read them and I think that's just not I don't want to get into it, or I just don't think it's quite relevant or whatever. But from I think this is from February 2nd as well. Surprise, surprise. I guess I was busy on Friday, huh? Let me the article is titled James Madison, one of the framers, warned us the morbidly rich are the greatest threat to our republic. Madison wasn't talking about an abstraction or some highfalutin concept. He was talking about how some rich people will inevitably try to seize political power to screw everyone else. Mr. Hartman begins by writing, and you can subscribe and get his newsletter every single day. When I post the article and you open it, there's a place where you can subscribe to his newsletter. I think you should. I don't write a newsletter every day. I don't have time. I work 40 hours. Well, I work almost 50 hours a week. I don't have time for that kind of thing. And I'm not with you every day for a radio show yet. So I think his newsletter is very informative, and most days I post it. I think you might want to check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. He begins by writing, Republicans don't even try to hide it anymore. Amazingly, the House managed to pass a piece of legislation Wednesday that both helps hungry kids and gives a boost to business that want to invest in future products. It was a compromise, and neither side is ecstatic. But both Democrats and Republicans got something for the constituents. Doesn't that sound terribly old-fashioned? The two parties worked together, negotiated a piece of legislation that neither is overly thrilled about, but yet both are happy about, and both got something out of it. Republicans got even more tax cuts for businesses. Democrats fed hungry children. And even though this was a piece of bipartisan legislation that they negotiated and worked on together in the greatest traditions of government, consider the dichotomy within this piece of legislation. Republicans got tax cuts for business. Democrats fed children. And it's just the truth of the legislation. That's not even spin or my particular view on it. It's the fact of their legislation. Republicans got you businesses more tax cuts. Us Democrats fed your kids. Democrats got to lift, I go back to the article now. Democrats got to lift 400,000 children and their families out of poverty. And the legislation will immediately carry an additional 3 million kids from deep poverty to merely standard poverty with an expanded child tax credit over the next year, reports the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. The legislation will help over 16 million children growing up in low-income households. You can read the rest of the article on our Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. The European Union was able to negotiate with and get the cooperation, finally, of the fascist dictator Viktor Orban in Hungary and approve $54 billion US, 50 billion euros, in an economic package for Ukraine. Remember when the Republican Party used to be the party of a strong national defense? The pro-democracy party, the anti-fascist, anti-communist party? Not anymore. But the EU is stepping up, where the Republicans have forced the US to be absent. Amazing. Next time Republicans talk to you about freedom, law and order, strong national defense, laugh at them as they deserve, because they are lying. Surprise, surprise. Because they have not done anything of the sort in the last 8 years at a minimum. I often tell you on this program that everything began with Reagan. He flipped the country completely upside down. Largest industrial country to largest importer of industrial goods, largest creditor nation to the largest debtor nation. He did all of it in 8 years. But even he would be supporting Ukraine now. One of the reasons that Reagan gets so much credit for breaking or Cold War victory over the Soviet Union was his strategy of, we're just going to spend you into oblivion. We're going to dramatically increase defense spending, which he did. He had a goal of 1,000 ship navy, which I think we got close to. I think we may have gotten up into the 800s during his administration. I'm not sure we ever reached 1,000. I'm sure somebody can Google that or use DuckDuckGo and find that out and correct me. But we had the economy to sustain that kind of spending. Now, he, created the modern military industrial complex that Eisenhower and Kennedy warned us about. But he did spend the Soviet Union into oblivion. I can't imagine that Ronald Reagan would be sitting on the side while his party says, no, that's fine. Russia can take Ukraine. That's fine. It's not a problem. I can't imagine. I truly can't. We know the FBI has told us, congressional investigations have told us, the state of New York, Letitia James has investigated that I think it's $56 million was funneled of Russian money was funneled through the NRA into the Trump campaign in 2016 and various Republican races across the country. I've seen some reports that in upwards of 100 million, as money continues to be funneled through different super PACs and billionaires and groups in this country, direct Russian money into the Republican Party, into Trump, into these various Republican candidates across the country. And they've bought themselves a Republican Party who no longer cares about the strong national defense or the anti-fascist, anti-communist stance that they used to take, that we had to win the Cold War. That party doesn't exist anymore. It was so interesting to see this week. And by the way, folks, how many of you knew that we had a military base in Jordan? But after the deaths at Iranian hands of the 3 service members at Tower 22 in Jordan, well, then the Republicans were all up in arms. When are we going to strike? We need to strike inside Iran. John Bolton was a guest on Morning Joe. He was expelled, fired, removed from the George W. Bush administration because they thought he was too much of a war hawk. He was on Morning Joe this week talking about carpet bombing Iran. They have to pay. They have to feel the pain. So that they're pissed off about. And I'm pretty ticked too, to see 3 Americans die needlessly in a part of the world we don't belong in. Who knew that we still had troops in Jordan left over from the fight with ISIS? This is what Senator Sanders talks about. There's about 212, I think it is, recognized nations on Earth by the United Nations. I think it's in the 212 range. I think. We have troops in about 184 of them. We have 800 military bases. Again, these numbers are from Senator Sanders. That's empire. Meanwhile, China continues to extract all the mineral wealth it can handle out of Africa by building roads, schools, putting solar panels into remote villages to give them electricity. But I digress a bit. This modern incarnation using the old name Republican Party, because there is no functioning Republican Party anymore. The ones that used to scream through the Carter administration, the Clinton and Obama administrations, that we were weak on a national defense. Now all of a sudden it's okay if Russia marches through Western Europe. That's your law and order party. That's your tough on national defense party. You're none of those things. They're not a political party anymore. But the EU stepped up, didn't they? We spoke about inflation a little bit. I bring you this article from the BBC from 3 days ago, or at least I posted it 3 days ago. And it is proof that the inflation that we suffered post-pandemic and that Europe is actually still suffering from was manufactured, man-made. It is wealth extraction, not actual real inflation, which is a real economic cyclical event. It was manufactured. It was fake. It was wealth extraction. It was artificially inflating prices for goods and services. So I bring you this article from February 1st. Michael Race is the business reporter from the BBC. Oil and gas giant Shell has reported lower annual profits due to energy prices falling last year. Profits were $28.2 billion in 2023, down from $39.9 billion in 2022, which was the company's highest earnings in its entire 115-year history. Energy firms made record earnings while oil and gas prices soared in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The oil and gas giants, the giant fossil fuel companies, made globally historic high net profits that any corporation, actually not even just fossil fuels, but any corporation had never seen before. This article tells you straight out, because they inflated prices. Well, now, in the same kind of fashion that the Fed raising interest rates is to try to control spending and bring down inflation, we, the consumers, have done it for the oil companies. They artificially inflated prices. We finally knew it. I knew it from the beginning, but even the folks who were denying it understood that these prices were fake, that they were artificially high. And so we reduced demand, and then the price came down. Now, I think I'm not losing any sleep for Shell or Exxon or Aramco, the Saudi oil company, or any of them. I think Shell will get by just fine with just a smidge under $30 billion in profit. Here's the question. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We got an itch in there now. Oh boy. Yikes. Oh, great. I got an itch in the back of my throat. I'm going to keep coughing. It's a COVID itch. I can't get rid of it. It's amazing. I just keep coughing. I think the shareholders and the owners and the CEO of Shell will be just fine. I think they'll be okay. $30 billion. And that, well, 28.2 down from 39.9. So roughly speaking, $11 billion, a third less. But when we realize, when we admit to ourselves that that 39 billion, that extra 11 billion came from artificially inflating prices, that's wealth extraction. They should be sued for it. The regulatory agencies, both in the EU and the United States, should sue them for it. It's wealth extraction. It was not justified then. It's not justified now. And they weren't the only ones. This is a terribly, terribly basic example. It's not a great example, but it's a very basic one. It's a very bread and butter example. Like many of you, after certain work days, Kristen and I are absolutely drop dead exhausted. And the inevitable question comes, what would you like to do for dinner? And probably too often, a bit too often, we will get the good old-fashioned roasted chicken from the grocery and then pair it with potatoes or rice or well, Kristen's much better about veggies than me. I'm Irish. Give me a starch. I'm good. That said, and we used to do it a lot more even than we do it now, because the chicken used to be sometimes $5, $6, maybe $7. Not that long ago, I bought one. It was $12. Now, is there some dramatic shortage in chickens in the Lehigh Valley that I'm not aware of? I've certainly not seen any reporting of it by either governmental authorities or the press. Is there a national chicken shortage that regional or national chicken shortage that I'm not aware of? No. So much of the inflation that we experienced and continue to experience in some areas post-pandemic was artificial. It was created. It was manufactured by these corporations to extract wealth. And I have said this to you before. I will say it again. Why did they do that? They did it because of the creed, this post-Reagan era creed of big business, that greed is good. And that what's ours is ours, but what's yours is ours. That's exactly what seems to have become standard practice in the corporate world. It's that old kind of game that you did when you were kids, when you were splitting up Swedish fish. You bought 100 of them. One for you, one for me. 2 for you, 1, 2 for me. You suddenly had 3. Your buddy only had 2. 3 for you, 1, 2, 3 for me. Then you had 6, and your buddy only had 3. This is the mentality, especially of American corporations now. They want tax cuts and tax breaks and tax incentives as a regular course of business to do what their business is set up to do in the damn first place. But they want you to pay for it. Then they want you to buy what they're doing or making or selling or distributing at inflated prices for no justifiable reason. So they want to keep all their money while you pay. Oh, the coal company just poisoned a river. Well, the taxpayers will pay for it. We'll walk away. So you paid probably a tax break for the company to buy the land, or they got it given to them. You pay for the coal if the Chinese didn't buy it out from under you, and then you pay to clean up the river while the company either declares bankruptcy or the people who own all the money in the company move offshore and run away. It's this post-Reagan corporate mentality of greed is good. What's ours is ours, and what's yours is ours. I told you during and after this pandemic, and let's remember that the quote unquote stimulus checks, I called them survival checks. When none of us could work, and they began to come out during the Trump administration. Stop this BS line that Biden pays people to stay home and not work. Those first set of checks came out during the Trump administration. And they helped me keep my house. I'm not going to lie to you. I kept my house with that money. The extra unemployment money, I kept my house with that money. I kept food in my fridge and my cabinets with that money. I kept my cats alive with that money. But all that money, corporate America decided, that's not your money. It's ours. And how do they get it from you? Inflation. Wink, wink, wink. Were there some legitimate global supply chain issues post-pandemic? There were. Having worked in warehousing and logistics for 35 years of my 40-year working, there were legitimate supply chain issues. I get it. My local pub still can't get Newcastle Brown Ale. Was it bad enough to cause this 8, 9, 10, sometimes 13% inflation rates around the globe? No. That was wealth extraction. And it's exactly what this article tells you about. And by the way, now not every corner of the country can say this. We're very fortunate that we can say this here in the Lehigh Valley. Throughout history, even going back to Alexander Hamilton's 13 principles for building an industrial society, there's always been some form of governmental assistance. Maybe they build a road, access off of another road, sewer systems, a stoplight here and there for employees and trucks to enter and exit a certain facility. Here in the Lehigh Valley, we're very fortunate. We still have our problems. Housing affordability is just almost non-existent. In fact, I don't exactly know how all these new fancy apartments are being built, because I don't know who the hell can afford to rent them. But they're full. And part of the housing boom and redevelopment boom that happened in the Lehigh Valley post-Reagan, post having all of our industrial base stripped from us and sent either to the South or overseas, began when local municipalities said, come build here. You don't have to pay taxes for 10 years. Or come build here. We'll build all the roads for you. We'll hook up the sewer systems. We'll give you property tax breaks. And it worked. They did come. But now some of the municipalities in the Lehigh Valley are now booming to a point where those incentives don't need to be given away anymore. In Easton, Bethlehem, and to a lesser extent, but continuing to grow, Allentown, and then to a lesser extent, Emmaus, Macungie, and some of the outlying boroughs, Nazareth. These wonderful, and I mean, they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous, beautiful new apartment buildings. There's every square inch you can find. Somebody's going to build a new apartment building, a New York City style apartment building, if you will. Retail on the bottom, gym, might have an indoor pool, might have a rooftop deck, all these wonderful things inside. Retail on the bottom, all these lovely amenities, and then rentals up top, because God knows we can't buy anything anymore. Heaven forbid we sell them and people could actually build equity. That would be terrible. But those tax incentives are not entirely necessary anymore. And the same damn thing for warehouses. Can we stop giving tax breaks for freaking warehouses? By my estimation, and it's only my estimation, if you just drive up and down Route 33 and look at the warehouses, half of them are empty. Empty. Not just formerly occupied, now empty, but built brand new in somebody's farm field because they couldn't afford to be a farmer anymore and sit there empty. Not to mention the warehouses that were built in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and earlier in the 2000s that have been moved out of by companies because they move into the new ones that have been built. And yet we continue to be beat over the head by developers saying, oh, I want to build 27 million more square feet of warehouse space, but I want a tax break. You gave a tax break to that guy. I want my tax break. Tough shit. Because you're going to build here anyway. Because it's a good place to build. It's a popular place to build. It's good for your business to build here. You know the workers are here. Stop giving away the store for people to build here. You don't have to do it anymore. They're coming anyway. You want to help with a road? Speed bumps, an extra stoplight for safety, better sidewalks. I'm all over it. Maybe a satellite police station. I'm not kidding. Maybe a satellite police station in one of these new buildings. Or maybe a satellite post office for some of these bigger buildings where hundreds of people are living in them. I'm all over it. Those are the things that government should do. An additional bus route. Something like that. Enhanced Wi-Fi or internet connections. I'm all over it. But let's stop giving away tax breaks where they are not needed. Just because Joe, the developer, bitches that he wants a tax break because Jim, the developer, got one, or Sue, the developer, got one. Well, Sue was the first one to come here and build when none of the rest of you would. Maybe she deserved it. I digress. What a shock. What a shock. I digress a little bit. This is from 3 days ago as well, the BBC again. So Trump sued a man named Christopher Steele, who's a former MI6 agent. He's the one that wrote the infamous, that's why it's called the Steele dossier, about the potential bribery, or should I say extortionary tales that Trump had gotten himself into before he became president. It's a dossier that did eventually find its way to the Hillary Clinton campaign. Although I think it was originally sought out by some of the rivals of Trump during the 2016 presidential primary, Republican primary. It did eventually find its way to the Clinton campaign. Well, he sued Christopher Steele in British court, and the British courts threw that case out, saying it was unwarranted. What a shocker. Somebody did a count of just how many lawsuits Trump's been involved in over his years, and it's into the thousands. And if you didn't know that there were multiple layers of a justice system in this country, a DC judge indefinitely postponed the January 6th trial against Trump for no particular reason that I can tell. The reporting's been very vague in it. I will admit to you that I don't exactly understand and or know what the legal justification was. Now, we know that Trump sued to put it off because he's a presidential candidate. He's too busy. I don't know if that's what this judge used to justify such a decision. But if this is what Trump wants. He wants to just put everything off. I don't know if he's hoping he'll die before he has to really face the consequences. It's kind of looking like it's coming anyway. He only continues to get heavier, less coherent, more and more spray tan. But if that doesn't tell you that there are multiple layers of a justice system in this country, could you imagine a 17-year-old black male from North Philadelphia that had maybe a half an ounce of weed in his pocket? I wonder if he'd be able to sue indefinitely to postpone his trial. I tend to think not. How about a middle-aged woman from Texas in desperate need of an abortion because the fetus inside her is so malformed or dead that she had to flee the state to get reproductive care? Upon her return, under Texas law, she would be subject to criminal sanction. I wonder if she could just sue over and over and over again to postpone that indefinitely and then have a damn judge agree with her. I tend to think not. There are many, many layers of a justice system in this country. Oh, what do we got else here? There's a very interesting story. I'm not going to read from it. It's more of an analytical story, more of a commentary, somewhat biographical story of, oh goodness, I'm on the wrong screen. Okay. Again from the BBC. It's a nice, relatively short, it's not War and Peace, I guarantee you, explanation of exactly who Viktor Orban is. I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to check it out. Just one brief paragraph from it. Again, the title is, I posted it 4 days ago. It is written by Paul Kirby and the BBC's Budapest correspondent, Nick Thorpe. It's from January 30th. I posted it 4 days ago. That other side of information on Facebook. Since 2010, no serving leader in the European Union has led their country for as long as Viktor Orban. Since 2010. And why has he been there so long? Because he's rigged the elections. Since 2010, he has transformed Hungary into what the European Parliament itself has denounced as a, quote, hybrid regime of electoral autocracy, close quote. He appears uncertain how to describe his own invention, trying both illiberal democracy and Christian liberty. Either way, he has learned to maintain and constantly strengthen his grip on power. It's a very, very good article describing and telling you who Viktor Orban is. And if you've heard the name Viktor Orban before, that's because he is the new darling of Republicans. CPAC held one of its conferences in Budapest. Tucker Carlson has said we could use a little more Viktor Orban here in this country, the United States. So I ask you to check those out. Randall, you got a few minutes, go for it.
Hold on. Hold on.
Did I lose
you
you?
there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Did I bore you to death? Did you fall asleep? Did I bore you? Did I finally bore you to death?
Well, no, I'm still following your live, so you did not bore me.
I know. I'm just being goofy.
And you're not a bore a hyphen.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite sayings. You're not a bore a, you know, whatever. Anyway, yeah. Good spreading the word on what you've been reading for the BBC this week. And yeah, I read everything or I watch everything that you post. That's what good friends do. And us being Democrats, we're probably one of the 2%ers. What's going
Hey,
on?
Randall, get right up on that microphone for me. I'm not sure why, not criticizing, nothing like that. You're getting very, very faint. Just please make sure you're right up on that microphone for me, please, on the phone.
I'm trying to. Can you hear
It's
me
all
now
right.
or no?
I know it's a pain sometimes. They're not really, these things were created as phones and we kind of use them for everything but now. So they're not always the best designed to actually be a telephone. But yeah, just try to stay up on the microphone for me if you would, please. I appreciate it.
No, you know what? I got to call you back. I'm having a problem here. I'll call you right back.
I don't know if I'll still be here. Maybe. I guess I will be here because here he goes. I'm very popular tonight. At least I can tell people I got 3 phone calls. That's cool.
I
Now
got
you
you
got it. Now
Yeah,
you
my-
got it.
I can hear you now, and I think you can hear me now.
Oh,
correct?
yeah. Now you got it, my friend. It happens.
No.
Not a big deal.
Hey, I'm a almost 72-year-old that has a flip phone and doesn't know technology. What can I say?
That's fine. It happens. It doesn't necessarily, like I said,
Anyway.
these things were built, you know, they're, what do we call them? Mobile phones. And it seems to be that they kind of do just about everything but now. They're not always the best phones, are they?
No, I actually wish I had a landline still.
I had a landline up until I remember I switched cable companies and they were giving the landline away for $1 a month. And I had it and then no one used it. Like all I did was get spam calls on it and like marketing calls and things like that. And I thought, well, that kind of stinks. And I told people they actually got my old phone number back to me from when I first moved here. And I thought, well, fine, I can use a landline again. I used to call out on it a lot. It actually sounded way better than my mobile. But then, of course, like everything else, that was an introductory price, and they jacked the price up to some ridiculous. I think they went to like 25, from $1 to like $25 or something like that. I thought, well, nobody's using this anyway, so I won't keep it.
You were talking about corporate inflation.
Yes, manufactured.
And that's all being left and right. I just got, I got the, what did, okay, Amazon Prime put out a couple days ago for their videos. You got to have commercials now or pay more.
Right.
Netflix. Netflix is almost double their price. So we dropped it because we're hurting economically. Now Amazon, long before I used Amazon for doing Facebook, for example, or other things, I read books because I couldn't spend money to buy books anymore. And now Amazon Prime is going to charge $15 a month for their quote free book unquote to read. And my wife just says you got to go back to the library because of the household budget.
Right.
And that's fine. I have no problem with libraries. I support libraries. I always have supported libraries. But
You mean
they're not going to have.
you mean those evil socialist libraries?
Pardon?
You mean those evil socialist libraries?
Oh yeah, those evil socialist libraries, like those evil socialist fire departments and
Right.
police.
Yeah, schools. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Roads, water treatment systems.
absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's just, yeah. Whether it's Bezos through Amazon, or whether it's Zuckerberg through Facebook and his Instagram, or the real villain in the marketplace, Musk. These multi billionaires are just squeezing us. And, you were talking about the prices of barbecue chicken, pre-prepared barbecue chicken, because you and your wife work so much, you don't have the time or the inclination anymore to cook from scratch your own chicken. Yeah, that's
I swear to
that's
God, we're not that lazy.
not
It's
just-
not like that.
it's not just chicken; it's beef.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's only four. There's only four major chicken companies left in America.
Yeah.
There's only five major corporations left for beef in America, and the list can go down. Monopoly after monopoly after monopoly, grabbing everything, consolidating everything, buying everything out, small businesses to become multi-businesses. And I can't remember that there was a satirical sci-fi writer in the 50s, and of course I was the opposite. But I read that satirical sci-fi novelist, in the late 70s. No, excuse me. I started reading in the early 70s when I was in college. And that satirical sci-fi writer was talking about there was only five corporations left in America. There was food, there was energy, there was manufactured products, there was food, again, there was water and sewage, and that was it. They all consolidated into multi corporations.
Let
And
me get to, you just reminded me of an article. I will let you finish. I promise. I always do. But you reminded me of something, and I want to make sure that I get to it before we run out of time.
I know.
This
I
is
know. I jump over to villain
No.
street.
This is an article from AP. And Randall is so great to remind me of this article. And really, when he mentioned Musk, it reminded me of it. And I'm so glad that he did. I posted this one, I think 5 days ago. This is from the Associated Press. And the headline comes out of Dover, Delaware. And as we know, Delaware is one of the most corporate friendly states, certainly in the Union, one of the most corporate friendly places as far as incorporating a company on the planet.
Delaware.
So here's the story. This is Dover. And this is the dateline is, oh, don't do that now for me. Come on. Remember your app. Stop. Okay. This comes out of Dover, Delaware. This is about 5 days ago. Elon Musk is not entitled to a landmark compensation package awarded by Tesla's board of directors that is potentially worth more than $55 billion. A Delaware judge ruled on Tuesday. The ruling by Chancellor Kathleen St. Jude McCormick, I guess that's what they call judges in Delaware, comes more than 5 years after a shareholder lawsuit targeted Tesla CEO Musk and directors of the company. They were accused of breaching their duties to the maker of the electric vehicles and solar panels, resulting in a waste of corporate assets just to enrich Musk. Shareholders argued that the compensation package should be voided because it was dictated by Musk and was a product of sham negotiations with directors who were not independent of him. They also said it was approved by shareholders who were given misleading and incomplete disclosures in a proxy statement. The equivalent items to Elon Musk's voided $55 billion package. Well, here's things that would cost you $55 billion. You could circle the earth 213 times. You could lay you could lay the dollar bills for 55 billion. I read it wrong. You could lay down the dollar bills 55 billion end to end and circle the globe 213 times. It is larger. That 55 billion alone is larger than the gross domestic products of 120 countries worldwide. That's about half of them. It would be enough to buy just under 720,000 Tesla Cybertrucks. If you spent $1 every second of every day, it would take you 1,744 years to spend $55 billion. If you worked and got paid only $7.25 an hour, which is still the minimum wage here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it is equal to working roughly 3.6 million years, earning the federal minimum wage of $7.25. So what did Mr. Musk say in response? Musk reacted to the ruling on X, Twitter, social media platform formerly known as Twitter, that he owns by offering business advice. Never incorporate your company in the state of Delaware, he said. He later added, I recommend incorporating in Nevada or Texas if you prefer shareholders to decide matters. Texas, of course, having no state income tax. I'm so glad that Randall brought up Musk's name. It made me think of that article. Thank you for doing that. You stimulated my brain there to remember that. Thank you for that. So please go right ahead. I took your time.
No problem. I just want to point out to most people out there that know you're up in Lehigh Valley. I'm here in Delaware County, but we're right across from New Jersey. Everybody has to remember that Trump bankrupt all his Atlantic City contractors by tipping them on the money. And that wasn't just the contractors he stiffed. He stiffed all the working class people, that steel girder workers, plumbers, electricians. I go down and down the list. He stiffed them. Didn't pay them. He doesn't pay anybody. He's never paid anybody. And you know, we can have all these civil court cases in New York for defamation, and the court can award 63 million or whatever it is to the lady that he was already awarded, for sexual abuse, and then the 63 or whatever million for liability, or for what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, Jeff.
Liability?
Defamation.
Defamation.
He's going to appeal that.
Yep.
like he always does until nobody has any money to appeal anymore. And then I won.
And he's
Listen,
got the money,
didn't
and
get
he's got the money to keep doing it because he doesn't pay anybody anyway. But then,
No,
let's remember as well.
money.
Let's
But you talked earlier in the show about the $60 million he has gotten that was supposed to be for
paying cash.
his campaign, and he's paying that $60 million out to pay his friggin' lawyers.
Let's remember as well. You mentioned Atlantic City. He declared bankruptcy on his casinos. How on earth? A casino is a place where people walk in and hand you money.
It's where the house always wins. The house always wins in the casino. What
Yep. Hey,
All right,
listen,
listen,
I only
man.
got a few minutes left. I got 3 more articles I want to get to. You can either stay there or whatever. It's your choice. I do want to get to these 3 other articles because one of them, well, they're all disturbing, but one's really disturbing.
I want to tell you before you go, Jeff, thank you for taking Chris Smith on tonight.
That's entirely on you. I would not have known him any other way. I'm so sorry that he and I didn't get to talk about 100 other things. I think he and I could talk for a very, very long time. He's a man who's exceptionally educated and a very wide variety of experience and educational experience, both learning as a student and teaching. So I very much look forward to him to come back, and I'd like to get into politics more with him too.
I'm forward in late May or early June to get a full panel of my friends on with you.
You got it, my friend.
All right. Good night. Love you, bro.
Talk to you next week or soon. I'm not here
Bye-bye.
next week. Soon. All right. 3 more things I want to get to before the end of the program. We got about 14 minutes. From 5 days ago. This is from the Associated Press. I placed a header on it that this should shock you, and yet somehow probably doesn't shock you, but it damn well better disturb you. Fire crews found the burned remnants Tuesday of a prized bronze statue of Jackie Robinson that was stolen last week from a public park in Kansas. The Wichita Fire Department received a call around 8:40 a.m. about a trash can on fire at Garvey Park in the southern part of the city and discovered what appeared to be pieces of the statue, according to police spokesperson Andrew Ford. At a news conference Tuesday, he described it as not salvageable. The statue, which was cut at the figure's ankles, went missing Thursday morning. It honors the first player to break Major League Baseball's color barrier in 1947, Hall of Famer Jackie Robinson. So a group of people cut down the statue and burned it. That really should bother you. This is from the AP, also 5 days ago. I placed a header on when I pasted this article because Nikki Haley is somehow being sold to us as normal. She's being sold to us as an old-fashioned Republican, as the kind of Republican that we can all get behind, that we can live with, that we might disagree with, but at least she's still, that she's normal. Mrs. Haley is not normal. She is as bought, paid for, owned, corporatist, fascist as the rest of them. She just doesn't she just does it with a smile. And she happens to be not nearly as objectionable and just downright rotten to the core as Trump. But she is owned, bought and paid for, as ultra-conservative, austerity, fascist, as all the rest of them. She's an employee of the billionaires. She might be in a better package. The outside wrapping on the package might be nicer. Inside the box, it's still crap. After initially staying out of the 2024 presidential race, billionaire hedge fund manager Ken Griffin has thrown his support behind Nikki Haley as she takes on Donald Trump for the Republican presidential nomination. Griffin made 2 contributions in December and January to a super PAC backing Haley's campaign, totaling $5 million. And he's not done. And if she becomes the nominee, he'll spend 5, 10, 20, 50 million more. He's buying himself a president. Think Mr. Griffin won't get a tax cut from that? She's already talked about how she wants to continue to cut taxes on corporations because it's good for business. Finally, I have one thing left that I'd like to read. This is from the BBC. And it's authored, this is from January 31st, the BBC, authored by their culture correspondent, Noor Nanji. And this article kind of bothered me. And yet, I somehow found a lot of positivity out of it all at the same time. Not exactly sure how I got both out of it, because it really is disturbing and yet uplifting. This one I'll probably read a good chunk of because I actually have more time than I thought I did. But the article starts as follows. How's everybody doing? The answer, it seems, is not great. When Elmo, the Muppet, innocently asked people how they were on Twitter, thousands of users replied, sharing their grief and despair. The Sesame Street character now has responded, saying he's quote unquote glad he asked, and posting the hashtag emotional well-being. So here's the disturbing part. The immediate answer from a Muppet character or to a Muppet character is, we're hurt. We're miserable. We're grieving. We're filled with despair. And if you're poor, I can see exactly why you would feel that way. If you're working for $7.25 an hour, or even $15 an hour, which still keeps you below the federal poverty line. If you're an Amazon worker, if you're an oil industry worker, meat packing plant, a roofer working in Texas, where you're not allowed to take a break to drink water, or if you fall off the roof and die, nobody cares. Certainly the state of Texas doesn't. U.S. President Joe Biden, I returned to the article, I should say. U.S. President Joe Biden agreed, posting, quote, our friend Elmo is right. We have to be there for each other, unquote. Think Mr. Trump would ever, or Nikki Haley, or Ron DeSantis, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Lindsey Graham, Rick Scott, Mike Lee, Louis Gohmert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. Think any of them would say what President Biden said in that article? Or when he tweeted back, I think he still called a tweet, to Elmo saying, we need to be there for each other. Think any of them would have said such a thing? Did any of them say such a thing? No, they did not. Back to the article. It all began with a casual question posted by the much-loved children's TV character Monday Morning. Elmo is just checking in. How is everybody doing? He asked on Twitter. Cue a collective breakdown by the internet. Elmo, I'm suffering from existential dread over here, one user wrote. Every morning, I cannot wait to go back to sleep. Every Monday, I cannot wait for Friday to come. Every single day, every single week, for life, another wrote. Happen to agree largely with that statement. The world is burning around us, Elmo, said YouTuber Stephen McInnery. I think I might be saying that incorrectly. Celebrities such as Rachel Ziegler joined in, saying she was, quote, resisting the urge to tell Elmo, and I'm kind of sad. Perhaps the timing of Elmo's question was to blame. It was never going to end well to ask such a question on a Monday morning in January, at the end of the month that many people feel has gone on forever. But the furry, red-haired Muppet was not fazed by everyone dumping their troubles on him. Taking to Twitter on Tuesday night, this article says X, I just refuse to call it that. He wrote, quote, wow, Elmo is glad, he asked. Elmo learned that it is important to ask a friend how they are doing. Elmo will check in again soon, friends. Elmo loves you. Hashtag emotional well-being. Hence the quote from President Biden, Elmo's right. We need to be there for each other. Other Sesame Street characters also spoke up to support their friend. Cookie Monster wrote, me here to talk it out whenever you want. Me will also supply the cookies. Hashtag emotional well-being. Ernie's best friend, Bert, added, I'm here if you ever need a shoulder to lean on. I'll make us both a warm cup of tea. Sesame Street also waded in, sharing a link to mental health resources on its official Twitter account. And Elmo's efforts to support people's emotional well-being were praised by President Biden himself, who said he agreed. I know how hard it is some days to sweep the clouds away and to get to sunnier days, the president wrote. We have to be there for each other, offer our help to a neighbor in need, and above all else, ask for help when we need it. Even though it's hard, you're never alone. Joe Biden. And maybe that's a really good place to end for this week. Let's be there for each other. It's not that hard. A phone call, a text, send a funny picture, video chat, an email, a card. Geez, remember greeting cards? They're not digital. Remember greeting cards? We can do better as a community and as a society. I've told you on this program many times before, one of the great lies that was ever hoisted on the American people and the British people by Margaret Thatcher was by Reagan, that we're not a community, that we're not a society, we're a group of rugged individuals. We can still be individuals. I happen to prefer soccer. Other people prefer baseball. Others NFL football. Others hate sports together. I despise most vegetables. Kristen could live on them. We're all individuals to a great extent, but we are also a community. I live in a row of townhouses. If mine burns, my neighbor's going to be damn concerned. And they should be. We are community and we are society. We can do better to look out for one another, even when we don't agree on certain political issues or educational issues, or what movie happens to be good. We will not be with you next week. Enjoy the Super Bowl if it's your cup of tea. If not, enjoy a free night. We will see you in 2 weeks on February 18th. For everyone at TCP, for everyone at hot101.net, DJ Lex, DJ Earl, all the DJs at hot101.net, for George and Lynn Dare, For Sergeant Mac, for Daisy the dog, Guy the cat, Kristen, and of course the woman responsible for this program, blame her, April Riddick. I'm Jeff Kennedy. We'll see you next week. The Villain's View comes up live right now on hot101.net and that other side of information. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care of yourselves and each other.